I spent most of my life doing what made sense. And yet, somewhere along the way, I stopped recognizing myself in the mirror. Not physically, I could see the gray hair, the lines, the slow accumulation of age. But the person looking back, I'm not sure I ever really knew him. There was no moment of crisis. No great tragedy. Just a quiet, persistent feeling that I'd been living someone else's life. And the strange thing is, I can't even say whose. I'm 73 now. I live alone in a house that's too large for one person. And most days, I'm fine. I make my tea. I read the paper. I go for walks. But sometimes, late at night, when the house is completely still, I catch myself wondering, when did I become this? And more importantly, who was I before? I grew up in Derby, in a house that smelled of coal fires and wet coats. My father worked at the railway. My mother kept house. Everything had its place, its time, its proper way of being done. It was a quiet childhood. Unremarkable, really. We didn't have much, but we weren't poor. There was always food on the table. Clean shirts on Sunday. A week in Skegness every August, staying in the same boarding house year after year. I was an ordinary child. I liked drawing, mostly, nothing elaborate, just sketches of buildings, street corners, the view from my bedroom window. I'd spend hours copying the curve of a roofline or the way light fell across the pavement after rain. I liked the precision of it. The way a few lines could suggest something solid, something real. My father called it messing about with pencils. Not unkindly. Just factually. He'd glance over my shoulder sometimes, nod, and go back to his newspaper. My mother would say it was nice, then ask if I'd finished my homework. There was a teacher at school, Mr. Holloway, who once suggested I might consider architecture. I remember him saying it in passing, after seeing one of my notebooks during a careers session. "You've got an eye for space," he said. "Ever thought about it properly?" I nodded politely. Said I'd think about it. And I did think about it, for about a week. But then my father sat at the kitchen table one evening and said, "You need something solid behind you. Something with prospects." He wasn't being cruel. He was being practical. Sensible. And I agreed with him. I still do, in a way. Art was for people who could afford to take risks. We weren't those people. When I was 16, I had to choose. Art or sciences. I remember the form. Blue paper, slightly creased. I held my pen over it for longer than I should have. And then I ticked the box for sciences. Not because I loved them, but because they made sense. Because they led somewhere reliable. I didn't realize it at the time, but that was the moment the door closed. I went to university in Nottingham. Engineering. I was competent. Not brilliant, but steady. I understood the principles. I could solve the problems. I passed my exams without much trouble, though I never felt the spark that some of my coursemates seemed to have. There was a lad called Peter who used to sit next to me in lectures. He'd get genuinely excited about load-bearing calculations, stress tests, that sort of thing. He'd talk about them in the pub afterwards like they were puzzles he couldn't wait to solve. I envied that. I never felt it myself. But I kept going. Because that's what you did. You chose a path and you walked it. You didn't stop every 5 minutes to wonder if you'd taken the right turn. I met Janet in my second year, at a union social. She was studying education. She had dark hair and a practical sort of kindness. We started courting, that's what we called it then, and it felt natural. Easy. She made me laugh. She didn't ask complicated questions. We married 3 years after graduation, in a church her mother chose. Registry office would have been fine with me, but it mattered to her family, so we did it properly. Small reception. Beef and Yorkshire pudding. Someone's cousin played the piano. I got a job with a firm in Nottingham that designed industrial systems, warehouses, logistics centers, distribution hubs. The work was fine. predictable. I was good at solving problems, making things efficient. My colleagues respected me. My manager said I had a reliable mind. That phrase stuck with me. Reliable. It sounded like a compliment, and I suppose it was. But even then, some part of me wondered if that was all I was meant to be. Janet and I bought a house in Beeston. 2 bedrooms, a small garden, a mortgage we could just about manage if we were careful. It was a nice house. Solid. Edwardian terrace. Good bones, as they say. We had a daughter first, Gemma. Then a son, Tom, 3 years later. And suddenly life became something else entirely. Nappies. Sleepless nights. School runs. Parents' evenings. Birthday parties with too much cake and children running in circles. I was a good father, I think. I read them stories. I helped with homework. I built a treehouse in the garden that Tom used twice and then forgot about. I coached his football team for a season, standing on freezing Saturday mornings shouting encouragement at children who couldn't remember which goal they were meant to kick towards. Janet managed most of it, really. She was better at the day-to-day. The packed lunches. The doctor's appointments. The remembering. I went to work. I came home. I did what was needed. From the outside, it all looked right. And it was right. I did everything I was supposed to do. I was a good father. A decent husband. A dependable colleague. But somewhere beneath it all, there was this absence. This quiet sense that I was acting out a role I'd agreed to without ever reading the script properly. I catch myself sometimes, standing in the kitchen after everyone had gone to bed, staring at the tiles, and I'd think, is this it? Not with bitterness. Just with a kind of confusion. As if I'd expected something different but couldn't say what. And then I'd feel ashamed for even asking. Because it was more than enough. It was a good life. People would have been grateful for it. I was grateful for it. So I pushed the thought away. I told myself I was tired. That everyone felt this way sometimes. That it was just part of getting older, of being responsible. But the feeling never quite left. It just became part of the furniture. Like the crack in the hallway ceiling that you stop noticing after a while. The years went by in the way they do. Gemma went to university in Bristol. Tom got a job in London. Janet carried on teaching. I carried on working. Promotions came. The mortgage got paid off. We took holidays to the Lake District, to Scotland once. We talked about going abroad more but never quite got round to it. I suppose we were happy. Or at least, we weren't unhappy. Which sometimes feels like the same thing. I remember turning 50 and thinking, this is half over now. And feeling relieved, in a strange way. As if I'd made it through something difficult and could relax now. But there was still that absence. That quiet, persistent feeling that I was living just slightly to the left of my own life. I stopped drawing entirely by then. Not consciously. It just fell away. There was never time. And when there was time, it felt silly. A grown man sketching buildings like a child. I threw out most of my old notebooks during a house clear-out. Janet said we needed the space in the loft. I agreed. They were just taking up room. I wish I hadn't now. I retired at 65. There was a small gathering at the office. A card signed by people I'd worked alongside for decades. A bottle of whiskey. Someone made a speech about my years of service, about my reliability, my steadiness. I smiled and thanked them and went home. And then, nothing. Janet had her routines. Her friends. Her book club. Her volunteering at the charity shop. The children had their own lives now, Gemma married with 2 children of her own, Tom busy with his career, his flat in Hackney. They called on Sundays. They visited at Christmas. They were good children. Dutiful. But their lives were elsewhere, as they should be. I had time. more than I'd ever had. And I didn't know what to do with it. I tried things. Gardening. The gym for a bit, until my knee started playing up. I joined a local history group but found I didn't have much to say. Everyone else seemed to know exactly what they were interested in. I just felt adrift. One afternoon, I found an old sketchbook in the loft. It must have been from when I was 15, maybe 16. The pages were yellowed, the pencil lines faint. There were drawings of churches, terraced houses, railway arches, street scenes. A detailed sketch of our old back garden. They weren't good, exactly. But they had something. A care. An attention. A way of looking at the world. I sat there for a long time, turning the pages, trying to remember the boy who'd made them. And I couldn't. He felt like someone I'd known once and then lost touch with. Someone I'd meant to stay in contact with but never quite got round to. I wondered what would have happened if I'd said yes to Mr. Holloway. If I'd chosen differently that afternoon in the careers office. If I'd trusted that instinct, just once, instead of doing the sensible thing. In that other life, I think I would have studied architecture. Maybe not at a prestigious university, I wasn't exceptional. But somewhere solid. Somewhere that would have let me work with my hands and my mind at once. I imagine I would have struggled at first. The portfolio reviews. The late nights in the studio. The uncertainty of not knowing if you're good enough. The comparing yourself to people with more natural talent, more confidence. I don't think I would have been famous. I don't think I would have designed anything grand. No museums. No office towers. But I might have worked on small projects, housing estates, community centers, renovations of old buildings. Things that mattered to the people who used them. I might have felt, at the end of a long day, that I'd made something that hadn't existed before. That I'd left something behind. I think I would have met different people. Not better people. Just different. Maybe someone who saw the world the way I once did. Maybe I would have felt less alone in my own head. Less like I was speaking a language nobody else quite understood. I don't know if I would have been happier. Happiness isn't really the point, is it? I might have earned less. I might have had more doubts, more sleepless nights wondering if I'd made the wrong choice. I might have looked at men like the one I became, stable, secure, reliable, and thought they had it easier. That they'd been smarter. But I think I would have recognized myself. And I don't know if I can say that now. When I look back at my life, I see someone I respect. Someone who did his duty. Who provided for his family. Who showed up every day. But I'm not sure I know him. I'm not sure he ever really existed, except as an idea of what I was supposed to be. Janet passed away 2 years ago. A stroke. It was quick, at least. She didn't suffer. That's what everyone said, and I suppose they were right. The house feels larger without her. Not emptier, exactly. Just larger. There's more space. More silence. I can hear the pipes. The wind in the chimney. Sounds I never noticed before. I spend a lot of time walking these days. Around Beeston, along the canal, through Attenborough Nature Reserve. I see the same faces most mornings. We nod. We don't speak much. That's the way of it when you're older. Everyone's on their own circuit. Sometimes I stand on the bridge and watch the water, and I think about all the versions of myself I never became. The architect. The artist. The man who took the risk. The man who said yes instead of no. I don't mourn them, exactly. But I do wonder about them. I wonder if they think about me. I wonder if, somewhere, in some other version of things, I'm standing on a different bridge, in a different city, thinking about the engineer I never became. Wondering if he made the right choice. If he felt more certain than I do. If he ever stopped and asked himself the same questions I'm asking now. I suppose I'm telling you this because I think some of you might recognize it. Not the details, perhaps. But the feeling. That quiet, persistent sense that you're doing everything right, and yet something essential is missing. That you've spent your whole life being sensible, being reliable, being what everyone needed you to be, and somewhere along the way, you forgot to ask what you needed to be. If that resonates, if these thoughts find a place in you, then perhaps you're meant to be here. Perhaps this is where we make sense of it together, in whatever small way we can. I don't have an answer. I don't know if there was a right choice, or if any of it matters in the end. I just know that I did everything I was supposed to do. I ticked every box. I followed every rule. And still, when I look back, I can't shake the feeling that I left someone behind. A boy with a sketchbook. Standing at a crossroads. Holding a pen over a blue form. Waiting for me to make a different choice. The question I keep asking myself, the one I can't seem to answer, is this. If you spent your whole life being the person everyone expected you to be, who were you supposed to be instead?